US Secretary of State John Kerry visits India in a short while from now, and he's given Prime Minister Narendra Modi high marks just before his departure. In particular, Kerry zeroed in on Modi's development agenda. However, there are questions about America's eagerness to praise Modi after first denying him a visa in 2005, because domestic commentators are saying this is just an attempt to write off what happened in the past and begin on a new slate. But several people in the opposition think that this certificate coming from the United States is way too premature and that the US should not be interfering in India's internal political matters.
The new Indian government's plan, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, together with all, development for all. That's a concept, a vision that we want to support.
Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas gets a smartly timed thumbs up from Washington. Hours before the US Secretary of State arrives in New Delhi for a crucial round of the India-US strategic dialogue, after which John Kerry will also meet Modi in the Indian Prime Minister's first cabinet-level meeting with a US official.
We believe it's a great vision, and our private sector is eager to be a catalyst in India's economic revitalization.
Apart from crucial bilateral discussions, Secretary Kerry's mission to smoothen ties comes after much turbulence. With acrimony over the Devyani Khobragade episode still fresh, the new Indian government has also made pronounced international moves with BRICS, a bloc that questions Western hegemony, and made aggressive moves at the WTO, threatening to block a worldwide reform of agricultural custom rules. The more immediate question, though, while Washington buys emphatically into Modi's promise, has the Indian Prime Minister demonstrated enough in the 2 months he's been in power? Pratap Bhanu Mehta, who earlier called Modi the voice of change, has now cooled off in his enthusiasm. In a recent column, he wrote, Prime Minister Narendra Modi increasingly seems to be trapped in his own echo chamber. For a government that promised a new narrative, the adjustment to old ways is striking. With Kerry setting a positive tone for his visit, it is clear the US wants to put its best foot forward. The next few days could go a long way in deciding the direction and pace of this strategic partnership. Bureau Report headlines today.
US Secretary of State John Kerry is on his way to India, and before he touches down, the Obama administration has endorsed Prime Minister Modi's vision of secularism. John Kerry says Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is a slogan that the government of the United States wants to support. But has the Modi government been truly inclusive in its first 60 days in power? Have we seen enough to make people believe that the government will indeed take all groups, including minorities, along? Or is this a premature certificate coming from a government that is desperate now to do damage control and mend its ties with Prime Minister Modi? Joining us on the center stage face-off this evening, we've got Pawan Verma, one of India's best-known diplomats, also a member of the Janata Dal United. KC Singh, ambassador, with us also at this time is Sanjay Jha from the Congress Party, and China NC representing the BJP. I want to go across first and foremost to Ambassador KC Singh. As a neutral voice on this show, what, sir, is your independent opinion on whether this is a premature certificate coming from the Obama administration, or do you believe that in the first 60 days in office, Prime Minister Modi and his government have indeed done enough to make Obama and the world feel that this is indeed a very inclusive government, sir?
See, firstly, US has never been chary of dealing with countries with all kinds of, all forms of government, all kinds of systems, as long as they're allies of theirs. All over GCC, we know what kind of systems they have, but they're the close allies of the US. Therefore, to say that they would only deal with a country if it has a perfect Western liberal model is itself not what they have followed. But here clearly they had a problem, and their problem was that having denied a visa on the Freedom of Religion Act basis, now how do you put it aside? Now they've withdrawn an ambassador, they've realized that they have put themselves in a corner, and having got into the corner, how do they resume business with the Modi government and the reality that is facing them. So use a combination of flattery, use a combination of picking up a slogan, and therefore in a sense saying, we are putting it behind, we think this is going to be an inclusive government, and we take Mr. Modi at his words.
Pawan Verma, is this just flattery, an attempt to move forward to try and undo the damage of the past, as Ambassador K.C. Singh believes, or is this possibly an endorsement of Modi's vision of secularism, that Obama signaling to the world that he's on the same page as Prime Minister Modi when it comes to the idea of secularism?
Now, let me say three things, Rahul. Firstly, we don't need certificates from abroad where our own internal problems or differences or the evolution of our democratic dialogue is concerned. Secondly, let us not in any way devalue the importance of the Indo-US strategic dialogue. The United States is an important partner, and therefore this fifth meeting of the strategic dialogue is important on its own, preceding as it does Mr. Modi's visit to America in September to meet with President Obama. This being said, I believe that Mr. Kerry need not have really become a partisan to a highly contested slogan used during the election by the BJP, which was at that time Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas. In my own maiden budget speech on the budget in Parliament, I very strongly argued that so far what we've seen of this government, and certainly the budget is one of its most authentic document as a window to their vision, it does not show an inclusive approach. There are huge areas of the imagination is entirely urban, upper middle class and elitist. It ignores agriculture, irrigation, health, education, as I said, women's rights, minorities, and so on and so forth.
But that's
and
a critique of the budget.
Ignores the.
That's a critique of the budget, but you're suggesting that he
I'm
shouldn't have joined issue on a...
I'm coming to you, give me 30 seconds more.
Yes.
30 seconds more. And I said it completely excludes in its vision the least developed states where the majority of the poorest millions of India live, and therefore I had said in my own speech in Parliament that the earlier slogan of Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas has by now become Sabka Vote Kuch Ka Vikas. So it's a highly contested slogan. So for Mr. Kerry to come to India, I think a tribute to India's democracy, a peaceful evolution to a new government, instead of getting into the debate on the kind of government this is providing, because that is a matter which is already being very deeply questioned.
Okay, so you're saying this is a highly contested slogan. It gives a certificate to Modi's administration, something he hasn't done enough to uphold or hasn't done enough to show that his is truly inclusive government. China and
there was no need for Mr. Kerry to get into
Kuch Ka Vikas, alleges Pawan Verma. But do you think John Kerry's certificate signals the resetting of Indo-American ties? Is all the bad blood of the visa controversy forgotten? Or, as Pawan Verma says, that maybe Kerry has jumped the gun, should have given the Modi government more time to prove that it is indeed inclusive as it claims to be?
Well, let me put it in a reference to context. You know, all along we've seen a complete policy paralysis when it came to our previous government in India. Mr. Kerry's befitting tribute is only to suggest that we had seen no governance. We welcome this form of proactive governance. We had seen the word secular being misused completely. We had seen a lot of use of majority and minority. But when one talks about development, we welcome Mr. Modi's form of development, which includes every segment and section of society. Now, there will be critics who say whatever they choose to and propel on statistics which are absolutely faulty. If you take just for example agriculture, where a state like Madhya Pradesh is proceeding at 25% a year. I mean, it's historic, and to think that India is a power at par with the US is something that we should welcome. I don't think we need a certificate from anyone, but if Mr. Kerry has taken heed that we are a country of entrepreneurs, we're the oldest civilization but with the youngest population, and the human talent that we have in this nation of ours is not going unnoticed by nobody. At one hand, we have always felt that in the past how, we need to progress when it comes to infrastructure, health, information technology, etc. Today we're recognized in so many
I think you're getting
fields
slightly
purely
carried
on
away.
merit,
You are
and to
assuming
boost-
and
No, I'm
adding
not
to
getting
Kerry's
carried away.
certificate a lot of things which he didn't say.
No,
this
it is
isn't
not
quite
about a
as
certificate,
sweeping
it's
an
about
endorsement as you're
realizing
making it
our
out to be, but I
power.
want to bring in
It is
Sanjay
about
Jha for his
realizing
opening
our
comments,
power
and I'm
and our
coming back
talent,
to you.
Rahul.
That's the second part of the debate tonight, but on the first part,
Mr. Kerry cannot become an arbiter about India's internal political dynamics. He should not have done it. I believe strongly. And I believe that when India goes to America, it does not begin to either endorse the Republican Party or criticize the
say
Democratic Party, as the BJP spokesperson
This is not about
trying to
endorsing. This is
indicate.
about realizing India's talent and potential and making sure that
Yes,
this
that's an
talent and
entirely
potential
different
reaches
statement.
its
okay,
height.
you've made that point, you've set up this
But that's
debate. I
part-
want to
if
go
you've
across to
read Mr.
Sanjay Jha
Kerry's
for a Congress
speech,
perspective
it
on
applauds
Kerry's
us for our
endorsement of
positive.
the statement Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Clearly, America says this is a vision they want to support. Do you also think that this is way too premature and Kerry shouldn't have been jumping into domestic Indian politics, Sanjay?
You see, Rahul, when President Obama made his visit to India in 2010, you'll remember that he defined the India-US relationship as a defining partnership of the 21st century. So in a great number of ways, based on our democratic ethos and traditions, despite the fact that, both the countries have had very, very, a patchy track record, during the Cold War period, there is no denying that there is a certain strategic natural allies fit that, both the countries have talked about over the last a couple of decades. But the truth also remains that, this relationship strengthened during the time of, the UPA government and the Democrats in the White House because of the personal rapport and mutual respect between President Obama and Dr. Manmohan Singh. I remember, where President Obama called Dr. Manmohan Singh his guru. And there has been a great chemistry between the two leaders.
No, but
now, I think
Sanjay,
going forward, I mean, there is no denying that the
Sanjay, what you seem to be
Devyani
forgetting
was
is that in
derailed
the
the
last,
diplomatic
just one
dialogue
second,
to a great
Sanjay,
extent.
what you seem to be forgetting is that in the last 12 to 24 months of Prime Minister Manmohan Singh being in office, Indo-American ties were on a downward spiral. They almost had fallen into an abyss from where the new government needs to rescue those ties. India was off the agenda in Washington.
Can
The
I say
relationship
something,
wasn't really
Rahul?
moving forward. It was in a strategic vacuum. Nothing was happening. That's the challenge which Modi now needs to deal with and somehow find a way of resetting that equation. That's the mess and the legacy that the Congress has left Modi with, Sanjay.
Well, Rahul, let me tell you that, it is a normal protocol, a diplomatic protocol that, end of day, whenever you make a first serious visit at a foreign secretary level or a foreign, a minister level, that, you have to build a certain foundation for dialogue. But I think, Mr. Modi's Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is a shibboleth that frankly doesn't merit the kind of intensity or gravitas that we're giving it here. That was more like an election slogan. But
It's
end
an
of the
election slogan
inclusiveness, whether it's
that's being
social
endorsed
equity
now by the
or
Obama
or
administration
economic
and
equity
therefore becomes
has to
globally
be found to be
significant.
discovered.
I come to the second part.
No, Rahul,
one
Rahul, whether it's social inclusiveness, which is greater communal harmony, or a model of growth that captures the poor.
Who says there isn't communal harmony?
One second.
You
I
can
think,
use
frankly,
your figment of imagination
I
to
agree with
suggest
Pawan
that,
Verma when
there
he
was a
suggests that
chemistry between
India
Mr.
doesn't
Obama
need
and
these
Mr.
certificates
Manmohan
from the
Singh.
United States.
Where was the
But the
development?
most important thing is, can Prime Minister Modi and President Obama reset the India-America relationship? I want to go first to Ambassador K.C. Singh, because from the Devyani Khobragade incident onwards, and even before that, the Indo-American relationship has really not been moving forward. It's definitely not surging in strength as Sanjay seems to suggest. In fact, to my mind, it's been heading towards an abyss. After such an endorsement, given the bad blood, which is the context to where Modi comes from, Can Obama and Modi together reset the equation and send it into the strategic geosphere that it deserves to be in, sir?
You see, the Americans are trying to gauge if they can get some of the things which were their to-do list with the previous government, which they did not get. Now, therefore, the relationship had become very transactional. India hasn't done this. Nuclear liability, they haven't moved on. Intellectual property rights, they haven't done. So the US will always have their list. They will not pay necessarily attention to your list, whether it's visas or whatever else. But I think what's happened is with the BRICS summit, and now with the WTO stand that India has taken, where the trade facilitation agreement has been stalled because we want satisfaction on the food security aspect, I think there is already a stumbling block, and that's why, Kerry, we are paying attention to the slogan, but Kerry has also talked of a rule-based system. This is a system that the US created after the Second World War, whether it's trade, international finance, World Bank, IMF. We are challenging those with the Development Bank, with taking a position in the WTO and stalling the trade facilitation agreement. Therefore, we are beginning actually with new handicaps. Now, therefore, when Kerry comes here, he's going to be pushing you on that, because the time that you have is the next 2 days in which a decision has to be taken on the TFA, and the Brazilian head of WTO is working overtime to see if some compromise can be arrived at, or these may become new hurdles before Prime Minister gets to Washington.
Okay, I want Pawan Verma's thoughts on whether Obama and Modi together can reset the India-America equation. Sanjay Jha seems to suggest that all this cozying up is because of the great work that the UPA had done. The reality is that the India-America relationship was on a downward spiral. Given the bad blood that Modi brings to this relationship, or the fact that he was denied this visa, will he hold that against the United States, or do you think he's far too pragmatic to let that bother him, sir?
No, I don't believe he will hold it against him. You know, the United States is a far too important partner for India to have these factors matter now. If Mr. Modi is to play the role, as he has been elected to do, of the Prime Minister of the country. But the real truth, Rahul, is that relationships, and I disagree with Sanjay slightly, although I admit that there was a chemistry between Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and President Obama. You know, relationships between nations are not based only on personal chemistry. They are based on hard-nosed assessments of what is in your own self-interest. Now, there are issues which unite America and India. And there are issues on which both countries have a different perspective, be they energy, be they environment, be they climate change, be it the WTO talks, be it defense even, and including elements of foreign policy. Now, these are issues which will need to be resolved through dialogue. I don't believe we need to vitiate that dialogue by making the United States a partisan party to an internal political dialogue in India where we have neither sought nor do we want American certification or involvement.
So you don't answer my question. My question to you was this: do you think, given the context in which Obama and Modi will be meeting, that Obama and Modi together will be able to reset the United States equation, or do you think, given that Modi has shown that ties with China, ties with Japan are a big priority, wanting to strengthen BRICS is a big priority, therefore America will not be as important for him as it was, say, for Manmohan Singh?
I wish the relationship and dialogue between Prime Minister Modi and President Obama well, but I prefaced what I said to you by saying that countries act on national interest, Rahul. And there will be areas in which America and India will disagree, as there are areas on which they are in congruence. Now, we have to see how far we can narrow those areas on which we disagree without compromising our country's national self-interest. A relationship only proceeds on the basis of equality, where interests are not compromised for the sake of merely furthering a relationship.
Okay, Shaina NC, there are many in the BJP and the RSS who feel that Modi needs to be tough on the United States. Modi needs to, in some way, signal to President Obama that what happened in 2005 with him being denied a visa is not okay. Do you think at some level, especially because we're all humans at the end of the day, the fact that there was so much bad blood for so long, the fact that he was globally vilified because he was denied an American visa, will hold Modi back in the way he perceives President Obama in comparison with leaders from China and Japan and other BRICS nations? Or do you think he's way too pragmatic and way too smart to let bad blood impact him?
I think he's way too big and too magnanimous a leader to really bother about petty trivia. And just to set the record straight, as you know, that it wasn't him who solicited a visa or wanted or even requested for it. So I think that is a matter of the past, and let bygones be bygones. What we need to realize is, like what Joe Biden said, the Vice President, when he came to India, that we need to push so that trade from 100 billion rises to 500 billion a year. And issues such as this, where we as a nation have two things in common, which is with the US and with India: entrepreneurial skills and innovation. To add to that, Mr. Modi has won this election purely on a mandate of development and stability, and his attributes to the youth, who constitute the chunk of our intelligentsia, if you'd like to call it, or our intellect, or our human talent, is something that has been thought of extensively. So the way forward is, yes, we live in a world economy, we live in a global era where countries need to give and take.
So
but
you're
there will
suggesting
be no compromise
that there will
on
be
the
no
dignity,
compromise, but
and
Obama will not be given special treatment or denied special treatment just because of the fact that America denied a visa to Prime Minister Modi. I want to go across
I don't think that has anything to do with it.
Sanjay Jha. I think it's pouring in Mumbai. We're having a bit of a problem with that video link. I will fix that in just a moment with the help of our technical team. But is that at all possible, Ambassador K.C. Singh? There is a context, there is a background with Prime Minister Modi being denied a visa. Can he just forget all about it and deal with Obama as he would with any other country? Or will this factor play in his mind at some level whenever he meets a very high-level dignitary coming in from the US, sir?
You know what makes the, what Prime Minister's person, but normally politicians don't get bogged down in these things. He will move on. He's a pragmatic man. All politicians have taken hard knocks on their way up. They don't nurse these things because he realizes if he has to succeed, if he has to deliver on the promises, then US is critical. It's a relationship for technology, for upgrading cutting edge technology, upgrading the skills in India, education. Look at the 5 subjects which are part of the strategic dialogue. It's education and development. It's commerce, economy, and agriculture. It's energy and climate change. It's got health and innovation. Things like this. There are 5 different groups which are all about reshaping Indian economy, putting India on a high growth path. And that is what makes India attractive. The reason US lost interest was because your economy started flagging. You were not able to make internal adjustments or do structural changes which US thought would make you attractive. So ultimately,
you're saying, and I want to get Sanjay Jha on this as well, that this is not about personalities, it's not about America denying Modi a visa. It's about what India can do for America, what America can do for India, and if there's synergy in that one key equation, then everything else is forgotten. Sanjay Jha.
Yeah, Rahul, I believe that the American economy after the global recession is beginning to see a positive turnaround. So if you read Mr. John Kerry's statement, there's a lot of focus on private capital from America finding the Indian market as a great opportunity for both investment as well as for growth. And clearly, if you look at the US-India trade numbers, they are not the numbers that the BJP spokesperson said. They are around 63 to 65 billion US dollars as in a year ago. Now, end of day, even in foreign direct investment, America doesn't rank in the top 3 or 4. So I think the critical issue here is that end of day for economies like India and America, which are now very, very big. India is the third largest in purchasing parity as a world economy. I think the commercial relationship between the two countries are fundamental, because I think both countries can leverage it well. But I think the terms of those negotiations are crucial, because while India needs foreign direct investment, you can't have it at unilateral US based terms. So how this government negotiates that is going to be very critical.
I'm going to leave it over there for the time being.
In today's time,
this, make no
I think
mistake,
the political equations are determined a lot by the
okay,
economic
Shaina, 20 seconds. We're also out of time. Quickly.
Just literally, all along we have always felt as if all along we've always given ourselves to believe that US is a superpower and everyone else is a subordinate. Why I welcome this entire statement of Mr. Kerry is precisely that he is treating us not just as power, but he realizes the talent and potential of India and is coming knocking on our door. It's a moment of pride. It's a moment of pride for every Indian to realize that the way forward is on our terms.
Can I say one last word?
Yes, sir. Please, quickly. 20 seconds.
The most ridiculous aspect of this whole thing would be, as a result of Mr. John Kerry's statement on Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, is for the UPA and BJP to start sparring on who has done more for the relationship or who's more deserving for the relationship.
It's not about the UPA and BJP, it's about the Indian.
Please allow India's national self-interest to prevail. And Mr. Kerry should deal with India as a civilization and a nation.
For the last several months has been a very troubled relationship.
It's about India and the Indians.
So to my guests, I want to end it over here. Thank you all very much. This has been a troubled relationship. India has been off the agenda in Washington. It's about time that through these high-level visits, the equation is reset and we get back to the same sort of strategic engagement that India and the United States were having before India just fell off the radar with the United States administration. Ambassador K.C. Singh, Sanjay Jha, Pawan Verma and Shaina NC, thank you very much for joining us tonight. John Kerry's visit will be tracked very closely also because of the huge plans that are currently underway to welcome Prime Minister Modi in New York and Washington when he travels in September. We'll keep tracking this tomorrow. We're heading into a break. News and updates continue when we come back on the other side.